Racial discrimination against indigenous Papuans. Papua, with its abundant natural wealth and cultural diversity, has been at the center of attention. However, behind the beauty, there is a sad reality. The racial discrimination faced by the indigenous people of Papua. This is phenomenon occurs in all aspects of life, from economic to social to political. The first is news on racial discrimination fundamental issues in Papua. The news highlights that racial discrimination against Papua indigenous people was a major source of conflict in Papua. This is demonstrated by the trial case against Papua activists involved in anti-racism demonstration and the understanding that the issue of racism also involves many countries with crowded society. The discussion also emphasizes that the stigma of conflict and separatism in Papua makes the solution to the problem increasingly complicated. Evidence for this include the experience of racism against Papua students in Surabaya, which triggered a massive demonstration in Papua, and Adrian's statement about the difficulty of mitigating the conflict in Papua due to stigma and the physical and non-physical losses of the demonstration. Here, the form of the protest that took place in Jayapura, Papua on Thursday, October 29. Second is Untider Journal on Indonesian Law in Preventing Issues of Racism and Discrimination. In the journal, it highlights the effort and legal basis of Indonesia in preventing issues of racism and racial discrimination. In this context, it is mentioned that Indonesia has recognized the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and issues the Human Rights Act No. 39 of 1999, which reformed the prohibition of racial and ethnic discrimination. Although there are laws aimed at eliminating racial discrimination, their implementation in the field is still assessed as not optional. The National Commission on Human Rights is seen as an institution that plays a role in responding the case of discrimination and educating the public about the importance of tackling racism and ethnic discrimination. Third is Voice Podcast Discrimination Against the Papua Race. In the podcast, Haris Azhar, a human rights lawyer, and Indi Rahmawati, a host, discuss issues related to Papua, racism, identity politics, treatment of the Papua people, and government policy toward the region. The discussion began with an emphasis on the need to respect the Papua people, but also revealed the negative stigma that exists among non-Papua people in Indonesia. There is emphasis on the racial problem of racism that affect the people of Papua, both in the context of government and public perception. This language covered the impact of crime and stigmatization against the Papua people, as well as how identity politics often trigger a debate that blames a particular group. The conversation extends to government policies related to Papua, including infrastructure development and fund allocation. Infrastructure development in Papua has been critiqued for focusing on non-Papua industrial and business interests rather than the welfare of Papua-owned people. There are also discussions about the Special Self-Reliance Fund or OTSUS, a legality used by officials for personal interests called corruption. In addition, there is an emphasis on human rights in Papua, where treatment of Papua people is often inhuman and there is injustice in law enforcement. In the end, the talk led to the importance of a fair legal process and the resolution of problems with respect to sovereignty and justice for the Papua people. And the poster above reflects the reality that Papua society in Indonesia still face. Papua is often subject to racial discrimination and unfair treatment in various aspects of their life, including access to education, health, employment, and security treatment. This history of discrimination has deep roots in the cultural, social, and political difference between Papua New Guinea and the Indonesian government. There is a feeling that the interests of Papua are not always priorities, and this is reflected in limited access to research and service that can improve their quality of life. Some aspects of racial discrimination against Papuan citizens include limited access to quality education, economic gap, conflict, and social tensions. Efforts have been made to address this issue, including dialogue initiative and policy reform aimed at improving the situation in Papua. Nevertheless, much work remains to be done to end racial discrimination against Papua citizens and ensure that they receive fair treatment, equal rights, and equal opportunities with the other Indonesians. It is part of an unfinished journey in tackling racism and discrimination that is still a challenge to Papua New Guinea and Indonesian in general. The film is a documentary about the life and struggle of the indigenous people of Papua. It often highlights the impact of the exploitation of natural resources, social inequalities, and political conflict that are taking place in Papua. In the film, there is a narration of the inhabitant of Papua that tells their experience related to the exploration of the natural resources and their impact on everyday life. There are also scenes showing their struggle to preserve their culture and identity amid challenging circumstances. The conclusion: racial discrimination against indigenous Papuans is not a new issue. This discriminatory act comes in many forms, including limited access to basic service, a lack of equality of economic opportunity, and unfair treatment in the legal system. Media, whether in the form of articles, videos, books, films, or news, has an important role in voicing and depicting this reality. Raising awareness is needed from all levels of society to overcome this racial discrimination. Inclusive education, justice in government, and joint effort to fight for the human rights of Papuans are the keys to ending the cycle of discrimination that has been going on for a long time. So that is my conclusion about racial discrimination against native Papuans that I have taught through various media.